Hey everybody, Doug here. Before we push play on this NBA Jam podcast, wanted to let you know that there is now a way for you to support us. If you head on over to patreon.com/nostalgium, you can drop us a few bucks, and there's various tiers of rewards for things you can get. But most importantly, there is one, access to our Discord where you can chat with us and other fans of the show, as well as bonus podcast content, including the run of Still Muppeting Jim Henson podcast that we do, our monthly new improv comedy show called Cartoon Therapy, where every episode we sit down, put a cartoon character on the couch, and find out what's going on inside their little heads. So those are the main things, and then higher tiers, there's other rewards as well. Again, patreon.com/nostalgium. Go check it out. All right, that'll do it for this, and let's get ready to NBA Jam.
Hello, and welcome to Nostalgium Arcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting
We're closing out our month of video game episodes. We've handled incredibly lofty, deep subjects as death and morality. We've revived a dead god, and then we've slain another one. We've dealt with religion on every level and politics. And finally today, we are going to address who would win in a 2-on-2 basketball game, Bill and Hillary Clinton or DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince? We're talking about NBA Jam today. I am super excited to be talking about this. This is such a fun little nugget from 1993 that I know I spent countless hours playing, and I know that you probably did too if you're old enough. Everybody. I mentioned to my wife tonight that we were doing this, and even she said, I think I played that game. And I'm like, yep, if you've played it, everyone's played it. So very glad to be doing this, but it wouldn't be a proper game, of course, if I didn't have a teammate and help me do this. He has been on the podcast way too many times to count. You know him, you love him. Comedian Rich Baker.
Boom shakalaka. Thanks, Doug. I'm excited to not talk about religion, politics, death, or any of the other stuff in this game at all.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of that to be found in NBA Jam, for sure. So let us start where we always do. Rich, tell me your nostalgic memories of NBA Jam and why we're talking about it today.
Yeah, when you're like, let's do a video game podcast, I try and think back of the games that really still have some specific memories for me. And I didn't mess with the arcade much on this, but once it came to Super Nintendo, it became my jam. And I particularly loved the ability that I could if I could corral 6 friends to come over and we could make a little bracket and you'd pick your team and we could do an NBA Jam tournament, and that was there was no other game that I knew of where I could really do that, and I'll never forget that, and and the game was just so fun.
Yeah, this game was made by Midway. And the fact that this game was brought to you by the same company that made Mortal Kombat, I think there's a clear connection between those two. Not that there's, combat in this game or it gets grisly, although I don't know if it's in the original edition, but in some version of it, again, we'll talk about the secret characters, but Mortal Kombat characters can be, out on the court. the fun of this game to me is like a thing like a Mortal Kombat or a Street Fighter 2. Like, this is a game to be really played with friends in just like fun little discrete units. Like, we've covered this month. I didn't intend for August to be a video game month. It kind of just worked out that way. But we've covered Shadow of the Colossus and Final Fantasy X, which are, long. I mean, Shadow is like maybe an 8 to 10 hour experience. Final Fantasy X could be 30, 40. I mean, how much you want to sink into it, can go quite long. Those are, solitary games meant to be experienced as a big narrative. And this is the other side. This is the, like, as you said, this started as an arcade game. Like, let's just get in there and horse around a bit for however many minutes the game lasts, and then do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I was thinking about this. I don't know that I've ever actually played any other basketball video game before or since.
I haven't played much either. I did play one of the NBA 2K games, and it was, they're going for absolute verisimilitude as much as they can. The goal in those games is how, in what level of fidelity can we render a man's sweat and pores.
Oh wow!
If it looks like we get the skin right on an NBA player's bald head, we've won the 4K lottery here, and I remember distinctly feeling like it's just not NBA Jam. Like, the fun of this is like how basketball is just kind of a jumping off point for what this actually is. It's, I'm trying to think of another sport. There was a sports game for the NES I remember that was like robot baseball, sort of.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
I remember that one.
This is in that same vein.
Yeah, and then Blitz, which I think was some of the same designers. The football version would come out where it was like football, but like a little crazier. I never played it, but I think it was the same thing.
Yeah, they're trying to, again, make lightning strike twice with the NFL one. But I think basketball is kind of uniquely suited to this approach. I do remember an Atari basketball game I had that oddly enough was more like this than it was anything else. It was two little dudes made of little giant pixels at that point. And you would go up and down the court with the other guy, and you could steal the ball from somebody else, and you could shoot the ball. And it was very rudimentary, but oddly enough, if you took that, added 2 people, and then the kind of real crazy weird shit we'll get into with this game, you'd have this.
That's cool. Yeah, I played a lot of sports games for other sports, but for some reason basketball, which I was a fan of the NBA, I was like more of a fan of the NBA than any other league at that time in my life, and for some reason, this game was just like, once I played NBA Jam, I was like, I don't ever need to play any other basketball game. I'm good the rest of my life.
Yeah, I'm not a sports game guy either. I'm not the guy who's like, I got to get Madden and play that. Like, I want the 30-hour narrative to suck me in. Usually, that's more interesting to me as a gamer. But like, even I was like, I didn't buy NBA Jam for the SNES, but I rented it a whole lot. And I just, I think we should probably just back up a little bit and even just talk about like basketball in the early 90s.
Sure.
Because like that, I mean, the NBA has always been popular, but the early 90s under like the reign of Michael Jordan was a different beast.
Yeah, I mean, everyone I knew had a Michael Jordan poster. Everyone with money had Jordan, Air Jordans. Like, Jordan was everywhere in Fort Worth, Texas. Where like he had no business being, but he was just ubiquitous all over the world.
Who was your team back then? Since you were were you with the Mavericks or
Dallas Mavericks? Yeah.
And me growing up here, I should have been more of a Lakers fan, being from Southern California, but oddly, my uncle, my whole family is from New York. I grew up here. And so I remember him coming, he'd come out to visit from New York, and it would be a big deal. Oh, my uncle's here. And he would talk about the Knicks. And so I will always kind of default to New York teams in a lot of ways because of that experience. So this year was good for us
congrats on this year. Nice.
Yeah, I know. First time in a long time. But like Michael Jordan, might be the single best athlete I've ever seen. He's in terms of, or even getting beyond athletics. Like if you took it, like the person who's best at whatever it is, like if you say like, okay, well, Jimi Hendrix and the guitar, right? If you lined up every person who was like famous for like being the best at that thing, Michael Jordan might still be the best over all of them.
Yeah, and famous is the right word, right? Because he wasn't just the greatest basketball player in the history of the sport. He was a marketing machine, and his face was everywhere, his name was everywhere, like his everything was everywhere.
Yeah, you could be cynical about that, but when you watched those games, like when they did that three-peat and stuff, like you're like, yeah, this is a level of skill at anything. Again, is Michael Jordan better at basketball than Tiger Woods is at golf and Muhammad Ali was at boxing? Like maybe. Like it's hard to imagine, and it's hard to communicate for our listeners who might be young enough that they weren't really as, clued into like Michael Jordan contemporaneously at the time. Like this is a phenomenon that's like, again, Michael Jackson and music in the 80s. Like there's just something about this guy. Like he could do things with a basketball that like you said, you're in Fort Worth, Texas, you're a Dallas Mavericks fan, but you can't help but root for the guy. Like there's some, like you watch, like if it's the Bulls against the Pacers in the finals and you're from Indianapolis, part of you, I think, still has to kind of go like, well, fuck, man, like nobody can play basketball like that. Like, good for you. You beat our team. Very good job. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, he's famous all over the world in a lot of places where basketball is, not even a fifth tier sport.
Yeah, that's another one of the things, right? His fame is export, and he's not even in this game, as I recall. Like, I think, right? I can't remember when I was looking back at it. When you pick the Bulls, you get Scottie Pippen and somebody else. Yeah,
and I can't remember who the other guy is, but he was in the prototype, but he asked or he wouldn't consent once they went, so they had to take him out at the last minute.
Oh, that's interesting. I could also see where like. They want to try and make it that your team doesn't suck relative to the other teams.
Sure.
Like that's no fun if like in the code it says your team is shitty. But there's got to be a weird thing of like, oh, okay, well everyone's just going to pick the Bulls then to be Michael Jordan. So
sure,
they spread it around.
It's playing Mario with a star on permanent or something. One thing that was interesting about the game was that, like, if you were an NBA fan, some teams just sucked, right? The Dallas Mavericks really sucked at the time. The LA Clippers were shit. Like, I can't remember all the makeup, but there was plenty of teams that were awful. But even those awful teams would have at least one pretty good player. And then, so because of the 2-on-2 nature, a team that was shitty 5-on-5 in the real world could be okay in this game.
Yeah, and I don't know how. I know they tried to make the players sort of different to give them a flavor. I don't know how deep they got into the stats to really reflect that. I think they tried to, go off their stats a little bit, right?
Oh, they very much did. They had all these different percentages that they would adjust with like speed and jump and, long range shots, dunk shots. Like they really, one of the reasons this game made so much money is because you can feel how much effort was put into every little detail. I mean, we can talk about the sprites later and how long it took them to get the heads on and all that the digitizing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the marketing, the sales speak for themselves. This thing made the equivalent in today's dollars of something like 2-point-something billion in a year. That
first year in the arcade.
That is unfathomable for a video game. Even now,
shattered the record.
Like you watch, like this year's, assuming there's no more delays, we're going to get Grand Theft Auto 6 this year, and knowing what Grand Theft Auto 5 did. Grand Theft Auto 6's numbers should be nuts, even compared to, I'm sure they spent God knows what to make it. But you look at that and like, what did they spend making NBA Jam? It's got to be a tiny fraction of what they ended up making with it. It was a phenomenon.
Oh, for sure. No one knew games could make that much money back then.
I think it's one of those things where you saw it at your friend's house or whatever, and you're like, I could have a copy of that. Like, I got to have that. Because it's addictive.
Very much so. And I would say the arcade really did the best marketing for the home consoles because, like, I wasn't all that interested in the arcade, but once they said, it's coming to SNES, I was like, well, now I want to see what the hype is all about.
Well, yeah, because you drop some quarters in it and it feels ephemeral, right? It's gone. But if I buy it, I've got this cartridge and play whenever I want for as long as I want. And I can invite my friends over and we can all have a thing with it, right? It becomes a social thing. And there was such a pipeline back then too of like you make it for the arcade and then we have to try and figure out a way to make it work on, first, the 8-bit consoles and then here in the 16-bit world. So you would get like, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade beat 'em up, on the SNES to play, those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wasn't interested in the arcade partially because it was so crowded all the time. And like, I was impatient. I did not like waiting in line. And so I would watch people play it sometimes, but then I would just lose interest and go to another machine where I didn't have to wait.
Yeah, I didn't have an arcade that was like walking distance from my house, not even close. So like arcades were things. There was one at the shopping mall, not terribly far from where we lived. That was the arcade I'd probably go to most. And then the one we'd go to after that was one that was attached to a miniature golf course. But unless you're going off to go miniature golfing, then there would be arcade afterwards. But other than that, an arcade wasn't a place I was frequenting enough to where I could really get a lot of NBA Jam, especially here like in the early 90s. So it was much more of a thing of like, once it became a home thing, it was like, yep, now it's time to really let this thing rip. So let's talk about what it actually is. For people who didn't play it or maybe were too young, let's explain what is the Jam with NBA Jam.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2-on-2 NBA basketball, which isn't a real thing. But they had all the teams represented, and they had, I believe, at least in the SNES version, I believe they had 3 or 4 potential players from each team. But like you had 2 that were kind of default, and then you could select maybe 1 or 2 alternates. I can't remember how many. And, then you could either play the computer and you could play a season or play a single game, or you could play your buddy, whoever, and it's on controller too. And, it was 4 quarters of a basketball game. There were 3-pointers, there were dunks, there was goaltending, there were fouls. And some of these you could futz with, I believe, in the settings or some cheat codes. But for the most part, like, it was kind of standard game until you added the crazy dunks, the on fire mode, the announcer, going just apeshit, just doing some of the best voice work in the history of video games up to that point, and it was this fun experience to play basketball that felt a little more video gamey than just trying to replicate playing the game on a screen.
Yeah, it's that heightening that sets this apart, right? Where they said, okay, so you're going to want to dunk the ball, but what if your player jumped impossibly high, way higher than a human being ever could, and then dunked it, right? Let's put a little Space Jam into our NBA Jam. Like that, you mentioned the on fire mode. So like if you were to score 3 times without the other team scoring, you would get the announcer saying he's on fire, and then literally the ball would be engulfed in flames as you would shoot. And I think that would make your accuracy and stuff go up as well, right? So it's kind of a rich get richer system. So you want to do, especially if you're playing against the computer, then you really want to, take them out by getting this to activate. And I think there were also things that would improve your speed, right? So you could run a lot faster. So even before you start adding in all the cheat codes and the various things we'll get to, you're already taking basketball and saying, yeah, but we want to get rid of all the things that get in the way of the fun. Like, what about fouls? No, who cares? You're not going to get fouled for elbowing someone in this game. there's none of that. The only foul that I'm aware of is the shot clock. Like, you still have to get your shot off in 24 seconds, but you can manhandle the other players all you want.
Well, there was it might have been a settings things, but like if you knocked a player down, they might call it in, and then they'd throw it in from out of bounds. There might have been a free throw part to it too. I can't remember, but there was definitely violations. There was shot clock violations, and there was goaltending. That was a big one. And I remember like thinking I blocked the shot, and they called goaltending, and I'd be so pissed.
Oh, even in the real NBA, it's very hard to tell the difference sometimes between what's legitimately blocking the shot and what's goaltending. But yeah, like once you start saying like, okay, but we're going to take the guardrails off because it's a video game, like you open up the door to so much more like expressive play and fun.
Yeah.
Because you're really turning the more basketball kind of recedes into the distance. And again, like it becomes a true video game experience rather than a basketball simulator.
Yes.
You unlock the fun.
Yeah. And the fire, the ball literally being on fire and the smoke coming off of it was just, it was Mario. Like a lot of this is Mario. I don't, it's not the same company or anything, but like, jumping 6 times higher than the human height or whatever, like that's what Mario does. Like flames, that's what Mario does. And, you get to go into like star mode, when you're on fire, different things like that. So it definitely felt like you're playing a video game that involved basketball.
Yeah, and they did a good job of making sure they covered kind of all their like bases in terms of ways you could have fun. So again, if you're by yourself, you control both players, and essentially you pass back and forth, and whoever has the ball, that's who you control. And the AI will hopefully move your companion into a good position where you can pass it to them or make use of them. If you have a second player, you can choose to sort of each play one member on one team and have one AI guy against your friend, or you can both be on the same team against the computer. Or as you said, if you have even more friends and you have the controllers to do it, and the hardware, then you can have them play true like 4-on-4 with them.
Yeah. Oh man, that if I had known if there was a way to do 4-on-4 on the Super Nintendo, if I had known that would have been the end. I would have had NBA Jam tournaments even more than I already did.
Oh, there was a way. Yeah, they sold a hardware thing that would allow you to connect 4 controllers to an SNES back then.
Now that you say that rings a bell, but I certainly didn't have it. I don't think I knew anyone who did.
Me either, but it did exist. I remember seeing it, on TV or Nintendo Power or whatever.
Wow.
But they had
cool.
it. I didn't check to see if it's on like Switch Online now. Like I really hope that like it'd be nice if this came back in some way, the original one. I mean, that you could play, because there were subsequent versions of NBA Jam. I think there was one in like 2010. I think a couple of them, but they never quite had the magic that this did.
Yeah, Street Fighter 2 and NBA Jam, I feel like they're different companies that have a similar trajectory of like they broke the arcades, they broke the home consoles, and then people tried to make more afterwards. It was like, these are fine,
Yeah, there's been we're up to Street Fighter 6, and there's a whole bunch of like Street Fighter Alpha +1 or whatever, like all of these other titles, and they're like, yeah, it's more of the same though, like it, chasing that same high or whatever. But this, something about this original NBA Jam was special. Okay, so let's talk about the presentation. Which is really good. So yeah, the digitized sprites of, well, half of them are NBA players digitized. The other half are dudes they scrounged up.
Yeah. You play basketball? Cool. Come this way.
Yeah, from the neck down, all of the players are still digitized versions, but of human beings. But like they are, I think one person they used for this went on to an NBA career. I saw that in Wikipedia. I forget who it was.
Yes, I can't remember his name, but and he would be a player you could unlock too as a secret player as well.
Well, that's another. Yeah, we'll talk about the unlocking thing. But one of the things that when you can unlock secret players is all of these people, you can unlock their like full digitized form. Just like it's like Steve whatever who is their guy that they filmed. It'd be like as if they put in like the Mortal Kombat actors as like themselves as opposed to Raiden or Johnny Cage. Like, hey everyone, it's Ned. You can be Ned in Mortal Kombat.
Love it.
And then the of course their heads are all digitized versions of the real players.
Yeah. And the amount of work that they had to do to like go in and cut around like manually all these different images in order to do this, like it must have taken like the amount of hours must have been insane.
Yeah, no, especially back then. This was not easy to do in the early 90s in terms of computer technology and things like that. They would probably have to be very painstaking because for each player they would essentially need all of the same basic sprites. In terms of like, here he is with his hand out here. Here he is when he's dribbling the ball and his hand is slightly lower. Here's when he's running. Here's when he's, walking, whatever. And so you would have a sheet probably of like, here's every frame of animation we need from each of the players, which is why, they would use kind of the same cutouts for the bodies and then swap out the heads.
And then they had to go through and find pictures of all the heads of all the NBA players in like, I think it was 5 different positions. So like they're going through old video, they're going through old tape, like they had to research it. Like, it's not like they could bring them in for a photo shoot. They didn't have the budget at that point.
Yeah, I mean, today that's exactly what you would do. You would bring in the player and you would just do a 3D scan of their body.
Sure.
And poof, they're in your PS5, right? But like back then, yeah. I love that they're literally doing this collage type shit of like, okay, we got a game, and it's the Clippers versus whoever, the Suns, and then we're gonna go through, just zoom in on such and such player and just carefully snip out their head to then glue it onto this sprite is very funny. But the rest of the court looks great too. Like there's a lot of detail in the environment to give you kind of this fun. It plays with the same, at least on the SNES, the same way like a Street Fighter stage does. Like they use Mode 7 to kind of make it feel like the court's really, moving around in terms of parallax, but also the crowd, like the gallery, everybody in the stadium.
Yeah, the visuals are great. The crowd's great, and the look of the game is really fantastic. And as I said, that's where you can feel the love that went into the work that they put into every little painstaking detail.
Yep, and the sound is good too.
Sound, we got to talk about the sound.
Yeah, go for it.
So, not that many games back in 1993 talked to you, right? There was some, obviously Mortal Kombat, fight, finish him, stuff, they didn't send him as characters and stuff, but like, it was still pretty rare. And so to hear this announcer, who's killing it and doing the voice acting, just like so full of energy and being like, he's heating up and rejected, that kind of stuff. Like
from downtown.
It was, yes, it was. It made you feel. It made the game so much more fun to hear his encouragement. And I think he recorded, or they used like 40 different audio clips. So in one 4-quarter game, you might not even hear all 40 clips, and so it sounds. It obviously doesn't sound like he's actually narrating this game, but it did feel individual. Like, oh, he's talking to me.
Yeah, it was very rare to hear voice clips back then, at least in like console games at home. Like, I mean, we were just at 1983, you were just getting CD-ROM drives that would allow for like FMV, full motion video acting things like Myst and The Seventh Guest and like games like that. So like on an SNES, like the space on the cartridge is shockingly limited. It's hard to imagine, now, like think of what you can fit on your fucking watch, but back then, like you would have to find the literal like physical space on the chip to store these pre-done sound files. So they had to be pretty, stingy with what they put in there. And so, to have all of these clips, and then you have to have the game have the intelligence to not just be shouting them out. They're context dependent. So they make sense. Yeah. And like to have this guy who sounds pretty much like Marv Albert to me, saying all of these things, it felt like, oh, the game's really paying attention to what I'm doing. And it makes sense, so when, he says he's on fire, he rejected or whatever, like it feels dynamic the way that like Madden would ultimately kind of nail later by having actually John Madden tell you, what's going on.
Yeah. Sports games would definitely learn from this and take the ball and run with it, which was great. But, to hear just this, I always assumed that the reason why they could put his voice on this game versus like other games, like, you didn't hear a voice in Castlevania or Super Mario, was because there's no real music while you're playing basketball. There's only music in like the transition between like, selecting your player and stuff like that. So the music's fine. There's nothing wrong with the music, but like because there's none here, I was like, oh, maybe that's where they have the room for his voice.
It's possible that that's saved them a little space in the chip. But I think it's good that there's no music during the game. They actually really kind of capture as best as they can, for this era, like the sound. There's all these like squeaking sounds from like the shoes on the wood. You really like that feels like basketball. The sound of the ball dribbling. There's something about like the just the soundscape of any sporting event. Like, so when you make a video game out of that sport or like a movie, right? If you're going to make The Natural or whatever, a baseball movie, like the crack of the bat, like that, there's such a like visceral soundscape to each sport that like you have to like, it wouldn't feel like basketball. It wouldn't feel tactile without those sounds, the ball hitting the rim and the swoosh, all of those sounds that just feel like, yes, it's happening for real.
Yeah, and the swoosh of the net, I don't watch too much NBA now, so I don't know if it's different, but like you couldn't really, like if someone nailed a good shot, you couldn't really hear it through the TV speakers. That's something you heard in person. And so like hearing it on the video game was kind of this almost surreal experience. I don't even think I clocked at the time.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like, because a video game is something you're just pushing buttons with your thumbs, you gotta give the player like different kinds of feedback to kind of make things feel like they have weight, and sound is a big one of those. And especially again for basketball, like there's sounds people are expecting to hear, and again the squeak of the shoes, the ball, and the net, and then the roar of the crowd. Mm-hmm. That coupled with the announcing, like just makes this pop.
And the dunk was, I don't know what they did to soup up the dunk, but if you dunked the ball successfully, it sounded good. Like gagoosh, just like really visceral, like I said.
It's the way it, like in your mind, where if you were like, oh man, if I got my shot and I was in the NBA and I fucking just jumped and I dunked it, like picture yourself telling that as like an 11-year-old or like, you jumped in the air and I just went kaboom, the way kids describe stuff. That's how that feels when you do that in this game. Like it's not the sound a real dunk makes. It's the sound that it makes in your mind because it's mythic.
Yeah, and I think there was like a sound when you would do like the spinning move, on the crazy dunk, like so that was cool too.
Yeah, they'd add a few like again like not realistic cartoon sounds sometimes for like again the ball on fire, things like that. Bring that to life. Okay, so we got to talk about the other like thing that's this game is known for, which is the cheat codes, secrets, all of the things you could do to monkey with this game to make weird things happen. And the first of those are, we'll talk about it, the secret characters. So how anyone learned to do this, I don't know. How this propagated through the world of kids before the internet, I don't know. But everybody knew at least some of these codes. I mentioned at the top, right? Bill and Hillary Clinton, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, to name a few. Do you remember any others that you were excited about?
I don't remember any others. I was trying to look them up, but it was a lot of the makers of the game were involved, which was cool. But I mean, I didn't care. And apparently, before they released it, they had a bunch of Mortal Kombat characters that you could play, but they yanked those at the last minute. And then also they had a Homer and Bart Simpson team that they couldn't get the rights for, so they yanked that too.
Yeah, I was trying to look up who they all were. I wasn't able to get a great list, and some of the things I was finding were like, well, this is definitely in maybe it's in the arcade version or it's in the Genesis version, but not the SNES version and things like that. So I've just showed a list here. Velociraptor, Triceratops, and T-Rex. You could unlock dinosaurs, things like that. Yeah, just a bunch of names that are, you said these are just the developers, people who worked on the game, which is I think some of them, they tried to make them look kind of silly, though, to make you want to do that, as opposed to, I don't know, I don't care who Gary is, nobody.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of these.
Apparently, if you unlocked the main director creator of the game, all his stats are better, across the board than, he's got the best stats in the game. So, that's nice.
That's good for him. Let's see. Yeah. So there's that. There's a whole bunch of other cheat codes and things you can do. So you can always be on fire, things like that. Big head mode, of course. Any others that you were really into or used a lot?
There was definitely one where goaltending was you could make it to where that wasn't a thing anymore. And oh man, I would just stand under the basket and just wait for them to shoot and just goaltend the shit out of it all the time. That was a lot of fun. I think there was one, and so there was something in the arcade that I didn't know about until researching for the show, that if you did something at the startup screen, you could play this Battle Commander or some kind of game at the beginning for a minute, and if you beat the game, you know about it.
I did, yeah, I saw this too. This is one of those like best kept secret things. I think it, as you said, it's only in the arcade version. And if when you're on, I think when you put in your initials, most of these are on the screen where you put in your initials, but whatever you do, yeah, it brings up this very primitive looking 3D. They call it a tank game. Basically, it's like almost like a first person shooter, where it's just you in a world of polygons for, I think you just have to last for a certain amount of time, like 30 seconds in it. I don't even know what the fuck this is doing in the code, but if you do it, then I think you get some kind of a stat boost for when the basketball proper starts. Like, yeah. Usually this shows up on the list of like crazy things embedded in the code of video games you didn't know were there. This has got to be like at or near the top of the list in terms of like, what the fuck? Like, what, that someone went through the time to insert this. It's definitely not the home console versions, because that 3D stuff was like, Star Fox could do that, but no other games could.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I don't think was a cheat code ever, but that you may have found in the researching, when they recorded all his lines, the announcer, he did a bunch with curse words in it, and the NBA was like, nah, we're going to pass on that. But apparently he recorded like, get that shit out of here, and like, he's fucking on fire, or something like that. Like, you can find one on YouTube. But they were never unlockable as far as I know.
I'm guessing they didn't encode that into the game. It's one of those things like maybe they would, but they were worried, this is in the age where, speaking of, Al Gore's in the game. His wife is not, but Tipper would be very upset with that kind of profanity in a children's video game.
Well, it's also worth noting that they really didn't want to fuck with the NBA license because two reasons. One, the NBA rejected them the first time they asked, because the NBA headquarters was in New York and the closest arcade was kind of a seedier place. And so they're like, I don't know if we want NBA in this kind of seedy place. So they had to go around Chicago and go a bunch of family-friendly arcades. And like, no, it's this. And they're like, okay, we'll do it. But also, this was the first game, I'm pretty sure, that ever had the full NBA license with it. So like, if they had fucked this up, the NBA easily could have said, well, no more video games, for a while or something like that.
Yeah, at the time, video games were big business, and you did have this pipeline in terms of like, well, if there's a popular movie, we got to have a video game licensed based on that movie. So like, Tim Burton's Batman is big. Well, we get Batman for the NES. Like we got to, that pipeline existed, but I don't know that entities like the NBA were necessarily thinking this could be lucrative for them. Now, obviously, after they made, $1 billion for them, I'm sure the good folks at the NBA were like, "Thank you, Midway. Can you, what else can you do for us?" And like I said, we got the NFL version. It wasn't as popular, but like this really, there were sports games on the NES. There were sports games on the SNES. But I think it was, after this that there started to be a much more concerted effort to say, like, we want the high quality licensed experience from the NHL, the MLB, whoever, the PGA, right? We want like players to feel like they can, really have the true sporting experience.
Yeah, and it's funny because we talked about Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, which obviously had Mike Tyson's licensing on it, but like that didn't cascade into a bunch of other sports sports licenses. This game is what unlocked it.
Yeah, and even then, Punch-Out wasn't licensed by professional boxing. They used Mike Tyson's likeness, and even then, only temporarily. Right? We talked about that on that episode. It gave you a glimpse as to what this could be, but Punch-Out's actually a pretty good comparison to this, where it's like, it's not a boxing simulator. There are games that try to recreate what boxing is like, and it's like, no, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out is a rhythm puzzle game wearing boxing clothes. The same way this is kind of a like, I don't know what you'd call it, but it's, less basketball than you would think for a game called NBA Jam. And we still haven't gotten a lot in this mode. Like I said, for the most part, all of those licensed things I mentioned, right? And NBA 2K is much more realistic. Madden is meant to be realistic. Forza or whatever is, racing, right? Auto racing is meant to be realistic. And yet, like, would I rather play Forza or Mario Kart? Like take the thing and run with it.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's something to be said for games that are like essentially flight simulators for other things. And that's cool. I know people who love flight simulators and these realism stuff, but like, I think you and I are the same ilk, because it's like, I need a little fantastical in my video game, a little non-reality.
Yeah, that's another one, right? Flight simulator. Like somebody really gets off on checking all of the gauges to make sure that they safely land the 737 in Dulles or whatever. That I could not be less interested in like a realistic flying game. Like I want a shmup. I want to, dogfight alien spacecraft or whatever. Like, so like, is it a flying experience? In a way, but it's not really, I'm with you. Like video games are a chance to allow you to experience something wild and fantastical. Even if it has some, relation to something in the real world. Like here's another one, Wii Sports, right? That was a huge monster thing. It doesn't really simulate tennis or bowling or any of those things, but it gives you a version of that. It's fun. That's what matters more. It's just fun to do.
Yeah. Oh, did we mention big head mode? I don't think we did.
I think I said it, but you're right. There's a big head mode.
Oh, you said it.
This is one of the first games I can remember having a big head mode.
And they found it by accident because they were messing with the the ratios of things during the development, and there was a bug or something that caused some players' heads to go big on some of the playthroughs. And rather than see it as a bug, they were like, "What if we made this like a feature?" And so I don't think you can draw a perfect parallel from that to any big head anything, which we've had so many versions of like big head stuff since then. But it was just an accident.
Those are the best kinds of creative decisions, honestly, which is like, no, steer into the skid. Right. Yeah. This is funny and it's hilarious that they have big heads. The players are going to like this. Don't write it out of the game. Make it stable so it works and it's a reliably interesting thing. But it's, I mean, look, how many games have big head mode now? Usually things that involve shooting, because it makes your head into a giant target. And it's hilarious to watch all these balloon headed, weeble people, walking around a virtual map. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it starts here. You always have to be careful saying this is the first time, because someone will come in
I mean, I could be wrong.
But I sure as hell can't remember a big head thing other than this before this.
No, not me.
Well, I mean, anything else you want to cover with NBA Jam? There's not a lot to talk about. It's a pretty simple game here, but like, to me, this is all about just the expressive joy of play in a way that, like, all games try to do this, but like that, some of the ones we've name checked, like Street Fighter, like sometimes something happens where it's like, it's like, it's not only fun, but it's silly and it's addictive and like bite size, which allows everybody to go, like, I want to get some of that. Give me a turn. I want a turn.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, I don't know if they're making games as bold and experimental with budgets like this anymore. So, it was a rare time where games could really swing for the fences backed by major companies.
Well, arcade kind of experiences, which is what this really is, right? It started as an arcade experience, and it is like an arcade experience is, I put in a quarter and I get, 2 minutes of fun, or whatever, however long it lasts, right? Very few games are that modular where it's just, one unit of fun, please. It's, it's, you're getting, like I say, 40 hours of a different kind of fun. You're getting a quest to go on. I can't think of too many games now, like even with things like, again, like, the NBA 2Ks and stuff, those take longer. They're more involved. It's not a pick up and play this for 2 minutes kind of experience. And I don't think anyone's, at least not outside of the indie space, is really making anything like this. The only one who does it, interestingly, is I think Nintendo has done some of these things where it's like, Mario 99, right? Or Tetris 99. They did an F-Zero 99, where it's like you have 99 players at once playing the game, and then they get whittled down to one. That's meant to be a quick hit of, a fun, zany experience that's over, and then, okay, who's ready for another round? Nintendo's still doing that from time to time.
That's cool.
But definitely the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah. But yeah, man. Not much to say about this game other than what we said. But that said, for a simple little silly basketball game, it made a redonkulous impact. And we still say boom shakalaka without irony in sports today. It's like...
Anyone know what it means?
No, I know that it comes from a Sly and the Family Stone song, is what I heard.
Okay. Well, maybe Sly knew what it meant then. Yeah, man. Not much else to say about NBA Jam. It's a simple game. There's no plot, obviously, for us to delve into. Like I said, something you can pick up and play for 2 minutes. I'm amazed we've talked this long about it, but I'm glad we did, because it's such a fun little touchstone that everybody had. And very welcome addition to this podcast. So, Rich, if people want to find you and your stuff, what is that stuff and where do they find it?
Thanks so much, Doug. I teach online improv classes at daretofailimprov.com is the website. And everyone gets a first-time free drop-in just to come check it out. Even if you're a total beginner, you can. It's a safe space for people to come in and just learn. And so, please find me on my website. Reach out, Dare to Fail Improv.
Yep. And as for me, I am the host of 2 other podcasts. I have Playing by Ear that I do with my wife, Amy, and my brother-in-law, Kyle. Each episode, one of us or a guest brings in an album, and we go through the music track by track and score it and talk about what we like and don't like. So if you want a music analysis show, that's there for you. If you want to drop a few bucks into the machine, at www.patreon.com/stillloadingpod, you can go over there and listen to me and Josh Koval from the Still Loading podcast, do our joint show, Still Muppeting, where every month we have a different Jim Henson thing that we discuss. And I think if this is coming out in August, I believe the entry is Follow That Bird, the Sesame Street movie. So before that, we did Fraggle Rock, and before that was Labyrinth. So we've always got a different Jim Henson thing that we're doing once a month. So go check that out. If you want to get in touch with us, our social media portals are all in the show notes. That's where you go to tell us what you think. Also, of those, I would suggest you follow us on Instagram, BlueSky, or Facebook, because every Wednesday I'll post a clue as to what the next episode is going to be. So that's how you can come over and play along and find out what's next. And of course, lastly, if you have time, and this takes very little time at all, drop a review for the podcast. Not just mine, but any podcast you listen to, because that actually does a lot to help the podcast along, find new listenership and all of that, as does word of mouth, which is, of course, very much appreciated. Anytime you do that, we love it. So I think that'll do it for this one. Rich, man, thanks for bringing this to us. What a great little snack.
Thanks so much, Doug. Always a pleasure being on with you.
All right, bud. So until next time, that is one more entry in the Nostalgia Arcana.
fucking way! Yeah! Get that shit out of here! He's fucking up! No fucking way! Yeah! Grabs his Johnson! Grabs his Johnson! Yeah! Oh, no fucking way!